All right, so today we're going to be looking at Totality and Infinity
Yeah.
by Emmanuel Levinas.
Cool.
And we're going to be trying to unpack some of his ideas about ethics.
Sounds good.
So I guess one of the places we could start is this idea of the face-to-face encounter that Levinas talks about.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start.
So I guess the question is, like, what does he mean by that? Because it seems like it's more than just, like, literally seeing another person, right?
Yeah, I think for Levinas it is.
Yeah.
It's more than just that sort of physical seeing. It's about recognizing the other person as this kind of infinite being.
Okay.
And that when you encounter them face to face, there's this ethical demand that's placed upon you.
So, like, if you see someone who is maybe suffering or in need,
Right.
that, like, their face, you can't just, like, look away. It, like, makes a demand on you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just about, like, acknowledging that they exist.
Right.
It's, like, about recognizing that they have needs and that you have some kind of responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, but I guess a question I have is, like, isn't that kind of limiting? Like, what about situations where you're not literally face-to-face with someone?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like online, or if you're dealing with like a large system or something,
Right.
like how do Levinas's ideas apply then?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think
Yeah.
it's something that scholars have kind of grappled with, but I think the core principle there is about recognizing the otherness of the person you're interacting with,
Okay.
and that ethical demand that comes with that.
Even if you can't literally see their face.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so we're talking about like this encounter with the other, and you said something about recognizing them as an infinite being.
Right.
Can you unpack that a little bit? Like, what do you mean by that? What does it mean to say that the other is infinite?
Yeah, so I think what Levinas is getting at there is the idea that we can never fully know
Okay.
or grasp another person. They always kind of remain somewhat mysterious and exceed our attempts to, like, categorize them or define them.
So you're saying, like, I can never really fully know another person?
Right.
Like, there's always going to be something about them that remains hidden. Like,
Exactly.
but doesn't that make it kind of impossible to have meaningful relationships if you can never truly know someone?
Yeah, I think it's a valid concern,
Yeah.
but I think, think about it this way. Haven't you ever felt like you've only scratched the surface of knowing someone, even someone you're really close to?
Yeah, for sure.
There's always more to discover,
Right.
more to learn about them.
So it's not that we can't connect with people.
Yeah.
It's just that we have to recognize that there are limits to our understanding.
Exactly.
Nick.
Yeah, and I think that recognition can actually, like, deepen our relationships,
Okay.
because instead of trying to force someone into, like, a neat little box,
Right.
you kind of approach them with this sense of wonder, this willingness to be surprised by them.
Okay, so we have this face-to-face encounter.
Right.
We're recognizing the other as this infinite being that we can never fully grasp.
Right.
Where do we go from there? Like, what's the next step in Levinas's thinking?
Well, I think this is where he introduces the concepts of totality versus infinity.
Okay.
And so totality kind of represents this human need we all have
Yeah.
to try and understand everything, to fit it into neat categories, to systematize things.
Right. Like when we encounter something new, our brains want to like categorize it.
Right.
And make it fit into our existing understanding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Levinas is saying that this way of thinking, this totalizing way of thinking, just doesn't work when it comes to other people.
Right?
You can't contain their infinity
Okay.
within your own limited frameworks.
It's like trying to put the ocean in a teacup.
Exactly, yeah.
Just doesn't fit.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Okay. And he actually has a quote about this, right?
He does, yeah.
Do you remember what it is?
Yeah, he says, the relation with the other puts in question the same, precisely by the alterity of the other.
Okay, so encountering another person
Yeah.
forces us to confront the limitations of our own knowledge.
Right.
And the fact that there's always something more
Yeah,
that we can't fully grasp.
exactly.
Okay, and this encounter isn't just like some abstract philosophical notion
Right.
for Levinas, right?
No, not at all.
Like this is the basis of
Yeah.
all meaningful existence.
Yeah, exactly.
He even calls ethics like the first philosophy, like suggesting that it's like the foundation
Yeah.
for all of our thinking and actions.
It precedes everything else.
So before we can even like build any grand theories or ponder the mysteries of the universe,
Right.
we have this like fundamental responsibility to each other.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Well, and it's not a choice.
Right.
It's not like we can choose to be ethical or not.
Right.
The mere presence of the other person places this demand on us,
Okay.
whether we like it or not. And that's where we'll pick up next time.
Sounds good. And, one of the ways that Levinas kind of brings this down to earth
Okay.
is through this idea of the saying and the said.
The saying and the said.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never heard those terms before.
Yes.
Can you kind of unpack that a little bit? Like, what do those terms even mean?
So, the saying, think about it like the spark of genuine communication,
Okay.
where you're really expressing yourself to another person.
Okay, so it's like more than just words.
Right.
It's like the intention behind the words.
Yeah, the vulnerability, the desire to really connect with another person.
Okay, so it's like the soul of the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Not just the words themselves.
Right. And Levinas says that the saying is actually the birthplace of ethics.
Okay.
So it's in that reaching out, that offering of ourselves to the other, that responsibility really takes root. Okay, so because in the saying, I'm putting myself out there, I'm making myself vulnerable, and I'm like really acknowledging the other person.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and that going beyond yourself,
Okay.
that exposing yourself to the other, that's inherently ethical for Levinas.
Okay. And then what about the said?
Right, so the said comes in when that communication, that spark, becomes kind of fixed, categorized, turned into something knowable, definable.
So it's like taking a complex interaction and trying to like pin it down.
Exactly.
Make it fit into our existing categories.
Right, exactly.
Which sounds a lot like that totalizing impulse we talked about.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's the same kind of impulse.
Well, like if a friend tells me that they're having a hard time at work, and instead of just like listening to them, I try to like give them advice or try to fix their problem.
Right.
That would be like the said taking over.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And Levinas isn't saying that the said is bad.
Right.
It's a necessary part of language and thought.
Okay.
But we need to be mindful of how it can kind of flatten our understanding of other people.
Okay.
How it can obscure their infinity.
So it's like we're always balancing these two impulses. The desire to connect authentically, but also the need to like make sense of the world.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So how do we find that balance?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think the key is remembering that the saying always comes first.
Okay.
That initial impulse to connect, to reach out, to acknowledge the other person.
Yeah.
That's where true ethics begin.
Okay, so it's like every interaction, every conversation is an opportunity to practice this kind of ethical engagement.
Exactly.
Okay, we're trying to see the other person as more than just the sum of their words or actions.
Right, and to really hear what they're saying.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like a pretty high bar.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know if I always succeed at that.
Yeah, I don't think any of us do all the time.
Yeah.
But I think what Levinas is reminding us is that ethics isn't about achieving some perfect state of being.
Okay.
It's about the striving, the continual effort to put the other person first, to embrace the mystery, to acknowledge that we won't always have the answers.
And isn't there something kind of beautiful about that too?
Yeah, I think so.
Like the idea that there's always more to discover about another person, and that like our relationships can continue to unfold in unexpected ways because we never truly know them completely.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. Okay, so we've been talking about this on a very interpersonal level, but I know that Levinas also extends these ideas to the social and political realm.
He does, yeah.
So how does this thinking about the saying and the said play out on a larger scale?
Well, I think if ethics begin with the face-to-face encounter, then it stands to reason that this ethical responsibility extends outward to encompass the wider community and even society as a whole.
So it's like a ripple effect, like that initial spark of ethical awareness in the face-to-face encounter radiates outward, and it influences how we think about social justice and responsibility and how we structure our systems and institutions.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
You're getting it.
So it's like what we were talking about earlier with those situations where you don't see the other person's face, like online interactions or large systems.
Exactly.
It's not enough to just have programs or laws in place.
Right.
You have to constantly evaluate whether they're actually serving the people they're meant to help.
Yeah, and whether they're respecting the infinity of those individuals.
Which, of course, gets really messy.
It does.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there are so many different perspectives and needs and different understandings of what justice even means.
Right, and that's where that genuine willingness to engage in dialogue becomes so crucial.
So we have to be willing to listen to the other, even when it's challenging.
Yeah, even when it pushes us out of our comfort zones.
And to be willing to, like, revise our understanding based on what we learn.
Right.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about the face-to-face encounter, the infinity of the other, the saying and the said, and how all of this connects to social and political issues.
Exactly.
What stands out to you so far?
I think for me, what really stands out is this idea that our responsibility to the other isn't just about being nice or following rules.
Right.
It's like a fundamental shift in how we view and engage with the world.
Okay.
And I think Levinas takes this even further by suggesting that our sense of self, our subjectivity, is actually formed through our responsibility to the other.
Wait, so you're saying our sense of who we are comes from our obligations to others.
Yeah, it's a pretty radical idea.
That is a radical idea.
It is. It really flips the traditional philosophical script.
Right, because we tend to think of, like, the self as primary.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, like Descartes said, I think, therefore I am.
Right, like our own consciousness is like the foundation for everything else.
Yeah, but Levinas is arguing that our first encounter with the world isn't actually through our own consciousness.
Okay.
It's through the face of the other.
Okay.
It's that demand for responsibility, that call to action that awakens us to our own existence.
So before I even have, like, a fully formed sense of me, I'm already entangled in this relationship with the other.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's through responding to that responsibility that my sense of self takes shape.
Right.
Okay, so it's not like I start with me and then figure out how to relate to you.
Right.
It's the you that brings the me into being.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah, and it has profound implications for how we understand our place in the world.
Yeah.
It suggests that we are fundamentally social beings.
Okay.
Defined by our relationships and responsibilities to others.
Okay, this is really making me rethink some of my own assumptions.
Yeah, me too.
No wonder Levinas is considered, like, such a groundbreaking thinker.
He really is.
Like, he's not just adding to existing ethical frameworks.
Oh, right.
He's, like, redefining the whole foundation of how we understand ourselves and our connection to others.
You got it.
Okay, and you're saying that this is a hopeful view.
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Because if our very being is tied to our responsibility for the other, then caring, empathy, compassion, these aren't just lofty ideals.
Right.
They're woven into the fabric of what it means to be human.
Which is, like, incredibly hopeful.
It is,
especially in a world that can often feel so focused on individualism and self-preservation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Levinas reminds us that true fulfillment lies in our connections with others. Yeah. In those moments of genuine encounter.
Right.
Where we recognize the infinity of another being and respond with care.
Okay, so I think I need some time to process all of this.
I think we all do.
But before we do that,
yeah,
we've got one more part to go.
We do.
In our deep dive into Emmanuel Levinas.
That's right.
So stick with us.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
All right, so we're back and ready for the final part of our deep diving to Levinas.
Yeah.
I have to say, my brain is still kind of buzzing from all this talk about the other and ethics and infinity.
It's a lot to take in, that's for sure.
But I'm ready for more.
Okay, well, I've saved one of the most challenging concepts for last.
Okay, hit me with it.
This is something that really kind of shakes up the way we think about ethics.
Okay.
Levinas introduces this idea of the third party.
The third party. Yeah. Okay, that sounds a little ominous.
It's definitely complex.
So what's the third party all about?
So, we've been focusing on this intense one-on-one encounter with the other.
Right, the face-to-face.
Right, but Levinas says that relationship, that ethical relationship, isn't actually isolated.
Okay.
There's always a third party present.
Oh, okay.
All those others out there in the world.
So it's like realizing that my relationship with one person isn't separate from my responsibilities to everyone else.
Exactly.
It expands the scope of ethical consideration.
Yeah, exponentially.
Right.
Yeah, and with that third party comes a whole new level of complexity.
Yeah, because now I'm not just navigating my obligations to one person, but to, like, a multitude of others, each with their own needs and demands.
Exactly.
It's kind of overwhelming to think about, honestly.
It is.
How can I possibly be responsible for everyone?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Levinas acknowledges that we can't perfectly fulfill all those responsibilities.
Okay.
There will always be more needs than we can meet.
Right.
More suffering that we can alleviate.
So, like, what's the point then?
Right.
If we're destined to fall short,
Yeah.
like, why even bother?
And that's where I think Levinas's thinking is really powerful.
Okay.
He's not saying that we have to be perfect.
Okay.
He's saying that it's the striving that matters.
The strive.
Yeah, the constant awareness of our responsibility.
Okay.
The willingness to be challenged. The ongoing work of trying to do better.
Okay.
Even if we never achieve some perfect state of ethical purity.
So even if I never reach some, like, ethical perfection,
Right.
the fact that I'm continually trying, that's what's important.
Exactly.
Okay, and that actually connects back to what we were talking about earlier with ethics as first philosophy.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, it's the foundation of everything.
Yeah, even if we never fully achieve perfect justice.
Right.
Or eliminate all suffering.
Yeah.
The fact that we're wrestling with these questions, that we're striving to live ethically, that gives our lives meaning and purpose.
That makes sense.
And I think the idea of the third party also highlights the importance of humility.
Humility.
Yeah, like recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
Okay.
That we're constantly in need of correction.
Yeah.
Of being open to the perspectives and experiences of others.
So it's not about imposing my own solutions on other people.
Right.
Or assuming I know what's best for them.
Exactly.
It's about being willing to listen and to learn.
Yeah, to engage in dialogue.
Okay.
To be willing to adapt my actions based on what I learn.
And isn't that what ultimately leads to growth?
I think so.
Both individually and collectively.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like, we're not static beings. We're constantly evolving.
Right.
Our understanding of ethics and responsibility is always changing.
And isn't there something hopeful about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It means that every encounter, every interaction has the potential to teach me something new.
To expand our perspective.
Yeah.
To make us more attuned to the needs of those around us.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get a sense of what Levinas is trying to convey here.
Yeah, what are you thinking?
It's not about finding some perfect formula for ethical behavior.
It's not about a set of rules.
Yeah, it's about engaging in this process of learning and growing.
Right.
And striving to be better in our relationships with others.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it.
Okay, and you know what?
What?
There's something kind of freeing about that.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Like, I don't have to have all the answers.
Right.
I don't have to be perfect. I just have to keep striving, keep listening, keep reaching out to the other.
And keep learning.
Yeah, with genuine care and concern.
Exactly.
And in a world that often feels so divided, so judgmental, that message is incredibly powerful.
It is. It really is.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Levinas, where does this leave us?
Well, I don't think Levinas gives us, like, a clear set of instructions or a step-by-step guide. Right. But he does give us a new way of thinking.
Oh.
A new way of seeing ourselves.
Yeah.
In relation to others.
And he challenges us to be open to the infinity of the other.
Yeah, to embrace that mystery.
Yeah.
And to recognize that our ethical understanding is always evolving.
Right. It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly.
Well, I have to say, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed.
Understandable.
But also kind of inspired. Like, I have this new lens through which to view the world.
Yeah.
One that prioritizes empathy and compassion and a deep respect for the experiences of others.
I think that's a great takeaway.
And honestly, I'm feeling hopeful.
That's great.
Like, there's a possibility for real change.
Yeah, I think Levinas would agree with that.
To our listeners, I would encourage you to keep exploring Levinas's work.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not always an easy read.
It's challenging.
But it's definitely rewarding.
It is.
And who knows, it might just change the way you see the world, too.
Yeah, you never know.
That's all for this deep dive.
Okay.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning.
Keep learning.
Keep reaching out to the other.
Yeah.
And keep striving to live a more meaningful and ethical life.
I like that.